Bills on the Secretary's desk. I'm sorry, substitution.
Motion by Senator Greenstein, resolved that pursuant to Rule 17:3, Assembly Bill 4769 be substituted for Senate Bill 3214, with which it is identical.
Senator Greenstein moves the substitution. I'll move the substitution. This is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Substitution passes. Bills on third reading.
Assembly Bill 4769 by Assemblyman Danielson and Greenwald makes various revisions to requirements for obtaining firearm purchaser identification card, permit to purchase handgun, and permit to carry handgun, codifies sensitive places in which firearms and weapons are prohibited.
Senator Greenstein moves the bill. Senator Bramnick on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand the goal of the majority to eliminate all concealed weapons in the state of New Jersey and to return to the prior standard. The Bruen decision was pretty clear, and the Bruen decision was actually done because of the policies in states like New York and New Jersey. New York and New Jersey made it almost impossible for anyone to get a concealed weapon. Actually, the standard was there had to be a substantial and imminent threat. So let's talk about that standard for a minute. The young woman who was able to get that standard met before a Superior Court judge and was awarded a concealed weapon because of this threat is no longer able to carry that concealed weapon because this bill bars the carrying of the concealed weapon almost anywhere. And I'm happy to hear from the majority if that woman has a place to carry that concealed weapon. In addition, a police officer who worked for 5 years who's not retired under the standard allowed under federal law and who works for a security firm and who was able to meet this standard under the old law is now prohibited from carrying a concealed weapon. So the secondary consequences of this policy is actually detrimental to people who met the old standard. OLS, the Office of Legislative Services, that is normally fairly measured, has indicated that they believe that this is unconstitutional. So what we do today is challenge the Supreme Court of the United States. And I understand that you don't like the decision. And I understand that Supreme Court makes decisions that all of us don't like. But today, we know that in New York, a federal judge has already set aside and found unconstitutional a similar law in New York, and it is now up in the circuit court, but the circuit court has not ruled. So we have a federal judge in New York. We have the Office of Legislative Services. We have people who were able to be awarded a concealed weapon under the prior law. And the majority today has taken an extreme step. So we know we're going to be back here to revisit. Now, if this bill was about training people who were going to be awarded a concealed weapon, I'd be 100% with you. Because I think very significant training is needed. Background checks, very, very important. But to take away the complete right that the Bruen decision has given, it's an extreme decision by this majority. The last question I would ask, if we are complying with the new decision, where can the person who gets a concealed weapon carry? I would like that question answered, if possible, so when this court decision is forthcoming, that they've heard from the majority as to where this concealed carry permit is actually effective. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bramnick. Senator Bucco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've always supported common sense and reasonable firearm safety measures. Unfortunately, there's nothing that brings common sense or reasonableness to this legislation. We've already heard, and I associate myself with comments that my good friend Senator Bramnick just made, that our own Office of Legislative Services has questioned the constitutionality of some of the provisions of this bill. Those provisions that prohibit carrying on private property have already been challenged in New York and are up on appeal. The provisions dealing with sensitive places that are defined so broadly that you can't carry anywhere in the state have also been challenged, and the federal courts in New York are dealing with those. There's also another serious concern I have dealing with the insurance aspect of this legislation. This bill requires concealed carry permit holders to carry special liability insurance. I recently reached out to the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance to ask if those policies are currently offered in New Jersey. She recently responded by saying she wasn't aware of any such policies being offered by insurance companies in this state. I've also checked around and found that to be true as well. There may be an opportunity to get a rider on your homeowner's policy, but that's questionable. The Commissioner suggested that the person reach out to the NRA to potentially get a policy. I checked with the NRA, and they no longer offer such policies. So today, we could vote on a piece of legislation that establishes a requirement that no one in the state can meet. Now, I agree with Senator Bramnick. I think there ought to be training. I think there ought to be background checks. And there's other reasonable things and common sense approaches that we can take to make sure that concealed carry in New Jersey is safe and reasonable for all our residents. But this bill does not get close to meeting any of those standards. Given these concerns, I cannot in good conscience vote for this legislation today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bucco. Senator Durr.
Thank you, Mr. President. As some of you know, New Jersey's unconstitutional laws are what made me decide to run for office last year. Then in June, the U.S. Supreme Court told us what we should have already known. The Second Amendment cannot be ignored because New Jersey's majority party doesn't like it. For those of us in this state who support the Second Amendment, the Bruen decision was a case won, a rare win. Unfortunately, this bill before us today not only cancels out that win, it puts us further behind. The bill creates a complicated and expensive process to get the carry permit, then denies the permit holders the ability to even use the permit they just worked so hard to get. That's not hard enough. It also exposes well-intentioned people to potential years behind bars, essentially just for the crime of not being a lawyer. And it denies victims of domestic violence and other vulnerable people the ability to protect themselves in the face of real danger. Even the lucky few who were able to demonstrate the justifiable need under our old laws won't be able to carry their firearms anymore if this bill passes. The bill also raises fees about 1,000% for all gun owners. Yes, 1,000%. Personally, I do not understand what that has to do with Bruen or the fear-mongering about more people carrying guns in public. Just seems to be another attempt to harass law-abiding gun owners and discourage them from exercising their rights. In all 5 committee meetings on this bill, legislators were educated on the fact that carry permit holders are not a threat. Statistically, they commit crime at a lower rate than even police officers. Even after sitting through that education, every single Democrat voted to deny the people of New Jersey their rights. I'm proud to say everyone on my side of the aisle has voted no. We heard arguments that we have to pass the bill to find out if it's constitutional. But with all due respect, we know it's unconstitutional. Justice Thomas was clear. The Second Amendment prohibits lawmakers from defining sensitive places so broadly that they eviscerate the general right to the public to carry arms for self-defense. That's exactly what this bill does. Although it fell on deaf ears at the time, I repeated what I said when I testified against this bill in committee. All of us have sworn an oath to the U.S. Constitution when we took office, and many of you have done so multiple times. There's no question about it. A yes vote on this bill is a violation of your oath. I urge you to vote no. I know I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Durr. Senator Steinhardt.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I respectfully submit that we already have underutilized and largely ignored taxpayer-funded databases like NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, and laws like Community Gun that are better positioned to effectively curb and curtail gun crime and make New Jersey communities safer, rather than trying to undercut the Supreme Court, Bruen, the Second Amendment, and even the federal court in New York, which recently found similar New York laws largely unconstitutional on everything from mandatory insurance to private property and sensitive place restrictions. I have no issue supporting gun laws that actually punish gun criminals, but not ones that seek to make criminals out of lawful gun owners. Thank you, sir.
Senator Steinhardt. Senator Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. We've had a unique opportunity here today where we saw you, Mr. Senate President, administer the oath of office to my good friend, now Senator Doug Steinhardt. Those words that are given in the oath have meaning. We swear to uphold the United States Constitution, the New Jersey Constitution, and all of the laws therein. That includes Supreme Court decisions. One of the issues that I really have with this bill is that even OLS said that certain parts of this bill are per se unconstitutional. And yet, this bill moves forward. As Senator Durr and others that spoke before me so eloquently stated, justifiable need is now a thing of the past in the state of New Jersey. The language in Bruen is clear and unambiguous and harkens back to the plain and unambiguous language of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. Justice Thomas knew exactly what was going to happen with the Bruen decision, and he gave a warning that you can't have so many sensitive areas so as to eviscerate the plain and unambiguous language of the decision of Bruen. He knew that this very bill would happen, whether it's in New Jersey, it's already happened in New York, and he knew that municipalities would define sensitive areas, as I understand boroughs of New York have already attempted to do, and we all know they are going to fail. Senator Durr mentioned fees. We have to ask ourselves, is there another constitutional right that is enumerated in the United States Constitution where we have to pay a fee to exercise it? Is there another constitutional right where we have to purchase insurance to exercise it? I'll answer that question. The answer is no. My questions were rhetorical. I know people will say, and I spoke about this in Senate Budget and Appropriations, people will talk about driver's licenses. Driving privileges in the state of New Jersey have always been deemed privileges and not a right. So they are not analogous in the least. This bill is absolutely wrong. It's sending the wrong message to the citizens of the state of New Jersey that this body that I hold in such high esteem does not hold the decisions of the United States Supreme Court in the esteem that it should. I won't go so far as to say that it is a direct violation of the oath, but it certainly is ignoring key language coming from our United States Supreme Court and also the warning given to us by Justice Thomas. We cannot continue down this road in the state of New Jersey. We have much bigger problems to fix in the state of New Jersey than to continue to punish law-abiding gun owners in the state of New Jersey. For all of the reasons that have been stated by my colleagues and myself, I am going to vote no, and I would urge others to do so. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
Thank you, Senator Testa. Senator Oroho.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to duplicate what Senators Bramnick, Senator Bucco, Senator Durr, Senator Testa has already spoken about. When we had the debate on the one handgun per month, many of us got up and talked about the fact that it's not doing anything for illegal gun ownership, and we talked about going after law-abiding citizens. And one of the things that really troubled me on this was when I saw a video of one of the assembly sponsors admitting that it probably wouldn't have any impact on illegal guns, but it would impact law-abiding citizens. To me, that's just absolutely wrong. And for all those reasons, as my senators have already stipulated, I'll be voting no, and I hope my colleagues do the same.
Senator Oroho. Seeing no further, I'll ask Director Secretary to open the machine. Please record your vote. All votes recorded properly recorded. Director Secretary to close the machine for a tally. Assembly Bill 4769 receiving 21 votes in the affirmative, 16 negative. I declared the bill passed. Take the usual course of past bills. Bills on third reading.